The market was loud with alien voices, each one haggling, shouting, and laughing as if cruelty was just another trade. The girl sat on the cold metal floor of the cage, her wrists bound with rough rope. Her eyes were wide, shining with both fear and shame. She had been dragged here by her own kind, treated like nothing more than junk. The traitor, a tall creature with scales like rusted iron, stood in front of the crowd. He lifted the girl's arm as though showing off spoiled fruit. "Worthless," he barked. "Skinny, weak, no use at all. But today, special price." The crowd laughed. Some aliens jeered, others spat near the cage. The girl lowered her head, trying to hide her face. She wished she could vanish, wished the ground would open up and swallow her whole. Then the bargain began. Not for credits, not for gold, not for weapons, but for something far more humiliating. 2 bottles of liquor, one alien shouted, waving a glass container filled with burning red liquid. And a shopping cart, another cried out, pushing forward an old squeaky-wheeled cart that looked stolen from some ruined city. The traitor clapped his clawed hands. "Done, she is yours. Worth no more than your trash." The cage opened with a screech. The girl trembled, her body stiff as the ropes were cut. She could barely stand on her thin legs. She thought this was the end, that she would be dragged into another nightmare, sold into pain and humiliation. But then she saw who had stepped forward, a human. He was not dressed like the others. No armor of polished steel, no symbols of alien tribes, just simple worn clothes, heavy boots, and a coat that looked patched too many times. His face was marked with age and travel, but his eyes were steady and sharp, glowing with something she had not seen before. Not cruelty, not greed, something else. The crowd laughed again, mocking the human. "What will you do with her?" One alien sneered. "She will break in one day." "Not worth even a coin." The human said nothing. He only handed over the 2 bottles and the cart, his expression calm. The traitor chuckled, slapping the human's shoulder. "She is your burden now." The girl's heart pounded. She did not understand. Why would a human buy her? Why would he waste even a worthless cart on her life? Her mind filled with fear. Was he another kind of monster? One who only looked quiet on the outside? She tried to pull away, but his grip on her arm was gentle, not harsh. He did not drag her. He only steadied her when her weak legs faltered. As they left the market, the noise of laughter followed them like a curse. Every alien voice was mocking, every eye watching as though they had witnessed a joke too good to forget. The human said nothing still. He pushed the squeaky cart with one hand and guided her forward with the other. She dared to glance at his face. He looked forward as though already far from the filth of the market, his mind on something beyond her fear. The girl's breath shook. Was this the beginning of another nightmare, or the first step toward something she could not imagine? She remembered the words of the traitor, worthless, but the way the human looked at her, calm, steady, made her wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, her worth was not measured in bottles of liquor and broken carts. For the first time in her broken life, a thin spark lit inside her chest. A question, a dangerous trembling hope. Why would a human want her? The road out of the market was dusty and long, stretching like a scar across the barren land. The human walked with steady steps, the squeaky cart rattling at his side. The girl followed, weak and unsteady, her bare feet leaving faint prints in the dirt. For a long time, neither spoke. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the squeal of the cart and the distant cries of scavenger birds circling overhead. The girl kept glancing at the human, her mind racing with questions, but fear chained her tongue. Why had he bought her? Was she a tool, a servant, or something worse? She had heard stories about humans, how some were kind, but many were dangerous, unpredictable. She wanted to believe his quiet face meant safety, but doubt gnawed at her. Finally, the human stopped near a cluster of jagged rocks. He set the cart aside and turned toward her. She froze, her heart beating faster, ready to run if he raised his hand. Instead, he crouched down, eye level with her. His voice came low, calm, and steady. "You can walk beside me," he said. "Not behind. Not like a prisoner." The girl blinked, stunned. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not since before she had been dragged from her home. She lowered her eyes, unsure if this was a trick. He waited a moment, then rose to his feet again. "My name is Daniel," he said simply before gripping the cart and walking on. Her lips trembled. A name, he had given her his name. She whispered it inside her head like a forbidden word. Daniel. The silence that followed felt different now, not heavy but fragile. She dared to walk beside him, though her body still shook. As the sun lowered, painting the sky in red and orange streaks, they reached a ruined building half buried in sand. The roof was torn and the walls leaned dangerously, but it gave shelter from the cold winds that swept across the plains. Daniel pushed the cart inside and set down a small pack. He moved with the calm rhythm of a man used to survival. Soon a small fire flickered, its light pushing away the shadows. The girl sat far from the flames, hugging her knees. She expected him to command her, to order her to work, but he only handed her a piece of dry bread and a flask of water. "Eat," he said, his voice firm but not cruel. She hesitated, staring at the food. It felt unreal, too simple, too kind. Slowly she lifted it to her lips, biting carefully. The taste was plain, but tears burned her eyes. How long had it been since anyone had given her food without demanding something first? Daniel sat opposite her, his face calm in the firelight. He did not stare at her like the others in the market. He did not laugh or mock. He only watched the flames as though lost in his own thoughts. At last she found the courage to speak. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Why did you buy me?" His eyes lifted to hers. For a long moment he said nothing. The fire crackled between them, filling the silence. Then he answered. "Because no one should be treated like trash," he said. "Not even you." Her chest tightened. The words pierced through her fear like light through darkness. She wanted to believe him, but years of cruelty had left scars deep inside. Still, something inside her shifted, something she could not explain. That night, as the fire burned low and the cold wind howled through the cracks in the wall, she lay on the hard ground, staring at the human who had traded liquor and a broken cart for her life. Her thoughts twisted between fear and hope, doubt and longing. For the first time in years, she did not cry herself to sleep. Instead, she whispered a promise only the night could hear. "If he is lying, I will run. But if he speaks truth, maybe I will live again." And as the stars glimmered above the ruins, the girl felt that thin spark of hope grow just a little brighter. The morning sun crept through the cracks in the ruined building, filling the dusty air with pale light. The girl opened her eyes slowly, her body stiff from sleeping on the hard ground. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she saw the human, Daniel, already awake, sitting by the ashes of the fire, sharpening a small knife with steady hands. Fear struck her heart again. The knife gleamed in the sunlight, each scrape echoing in her ears. Was this the moment he would show his true nature? Would the kindness of last night vanish like smoke? She pressed her back against the wall, her breath shallow. Daniel noticed. He paused, set the knife aside, and looked at her with calm eyes. "We move soon," he said. "Eat first." He handed her another piece of bread and a strip of dried meat. His voice held no threat, only simple instruction. Still, the girl hesitated before taking it. She expected him to watch her, but he turned away, packing supplies into the squeaky cart. She chewed slowly, her eyes never leaving him. Each small action of his confused her more. Why buy her if he did not want power over her? Why feed her without demand? The questions tangled in her mind like thorny vines. When they left the shelter, the land stretched out endless before them. The wind blew hard, carrying dust and the smell of dry earth. Daniel walked with steady steps, his coat flapping behind him. The girl followed, still cautious but not forced. Hours passed. Then in the distance she saw movement. Figures, 3 of them, walking toward them across the plain. Her heart jumped. Traders, slavers, hunters? Daniel stopped, his hand resting near the knife at his belt. His eyes narrowed as the figures drew closer. The girl clutched her arms, fear rising like a tide. If they were from the market, they would know her face. They would laugh at the human who traded liquor and a cart for something worthless. They might try to take her back, or worse. The strangers closed the distance. They were aliens, rough and scarred, their clothes torn and patched. Each carried a weapon, clubs of bone and rusted metal. Their eyes glowed with greed as they spotted the girl. Well, one of them sneered. "What's this, human? You buy trash now?" The second laughed, showing sharp teeth. 2 bottles of liquor for her, wasn't it? "We heard you got cheated. Hand her over. We'll give you back 1 bottle as pity." The girl trembled, her knees weak. She expected Daniel to step aside, to abandon her as easily as she had been sold. That was what everyone else had done in her life. Why would a human be any different? But Daniel did not move. He stood firm, his shoulders squared, his voice quiet but iron hard. "She's not yours," he said, "and she's not for sale." The aliens snarled, their laughter turning to anger. "Then we take her by force," one shouted, raising his weapon. The girl gasped, fear freezing her in place. She expected Daniel to run, to leave her behind as the smarter choice, but instead he stepped forward, his knife glinting in the sun. His voice cut through the dry wind like a blade. "Try." For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy in the air. Then the three aliens lunged. The girl stumbled back, her heart racing. Dust swirled as weapons clashed, metal against bone. Daniel moved with sharp precision, blocking, striking, pushing them back one by one. His knife flashed, his fists landed hard blows, his boots crushed into the dirt. It was not easy. He was only one man against three, and their attacks came wild and fast. But Daniel did not falter. His eyes burned with steady focus, as if every strike was fueled not by anger but by duty. The girl could not look away. For the first time, she saw the human not as a mystery but as something terrifying and powerful. He fought not for gain, not for pride, but for her. When it was over, the three aliens lay groaning in the dust, too broken to rise. Daniel wiped his knife, his breath steady. He turned to her, his voice calm, almost gentle. "Stay close to me," he said. Her chest tightened, tears burning her eyes. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but the words stuck in her throat. All she could do was nod, her heart thundering with something she had never felt before. For the first time in her life, someone had stood between her and danger, not because she was valuable, not because she was useful, but because he chose to. And that choice was more shocking than any battle. The sun burned low in the sky, casting long shadows across the plain. The girl walked close behind Daniel now, no longer because of fear, but because she had seen what he had done. 3 armed aliens had fallen, yet he still walked with calm steps as though nothing had happened. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, but she did not complain. She had learned long ago that weakness brought punishment, yet Daniel slowed his pace without her asking, letting her catch her breath. That simple act confused her more than the battle itself. As night crept in, Daniel found another shelter, an old transport station half collapsed and filled with sand. He cleared a space and lit a small fire. The orange glow flickered against the broken walls, chasing away the dark. The girl sat near the warmth, hugging her knees. She could still see the fight in her mind, dust flying, weapons clashing, Daniel's knife flashing. The image burned deep. At last, she whispered, "Why did you fight them? You could have given me back." "Saved yourself." Daniel's eyes lifted from the fire. His voice was steady, low, and calm. "Because I don't give away people like tools. Not even you." Her chest tightened. No one had spoken like that before. Her kind had thrown her away for bottles and a cart. Yet here was a human treating her like something more. Still, her doubt was strong. "But I'm worthless," she said, her voice cracking. They were right. "I cannot fight, cannot work. I will only slow you down." Daniel leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "Worthless? Do you breathe? Do you feel pain? Do you wish to live?" She nodded weakly. "Then you are not worthless," he said, the words cutting through the night like steel. Tears welled in her eyes, but she hid her face, afraid to show weakness. She did not understand him. She wanted to trust him, but trust had always been a blade that cut her deeper each time she reached for it. The night was cold. Daniel offered her his coat, heavy and worn. She hesitated before pulling it around her thin body. It smelled of earth, steel, and smoke, and somehow, safety for the first time. Warmth spread through her that did not come only from fire, but peace never lasted long in this broken land. From the darkness beyond the ruined station came a sound, distant, low, and rumbling. The girl's heart jumped. She gripped the coat tighter, her eyes wide. "What is that?" she whispered. Daniel stood, knife in hand, eyes scanning the night. The rumble grew louder, joined by harsh lights sweeping across the sand. A vehicle, crude but armed, rolled closer, carrying slavers marked with red tattoos across their scaled faces. The girl's blood ran cold. These were worse than the drunk traders at the market. These were hunters who took lives for sport. Daniel moved quickly, kicking dirt over the fire to hide its glow. He pulled the girl close, his voice firm. "Stay silent. Stay low." She obeyed, crouching behind the broken wall, her breath shallow. The slavers' voices echoed, cruel laughter carried on the wind. "There's a trail here," one shouted. "Footprints." human and small alien. Not far, the girl's heart pounded. She looked at Daniel, fear screaming inside her. They will find us, she whispered. Daniel's eyes burned like iron in the dark. Then we make sure they regret it. The slaver's vehicle screeched to a halt outside. Boots hit the sand. Shadows moved closer, weapons ready. The girl's body shook, every instinct telling her to run. But Daniel's hand rested on her shoulder, steady and strong. Trust me, he said, his voice calm even as danger closed in. The words sank deep, cutting through her fear. For the first time, she did not feel completely alone. As the slaver stepped into the ruins, Daniel's knife gleamed once more in the faint starlight. The girl's breath caught. She knew the next few moments would decide everything. Her life, his, and whatever strange bond had begun between them. And this time, she was not sure if she wanted to run at all. The ruined station grew silent as the slavers spread through the shadows, their boots crunching against the sand. The girl's heart beat so fast she thought they would hear it. She clutched Daniel's coat tighter, pressing herself against the broken wall. Daniel crouched beside her, his body still, his knife held low. His breathing was steady, like a man who had done this many times before. The girl wondered if he felt no fear, or if he simply carried it differently than others. The first slaver stepped inside, his torchlight sweeping across the cracked walls. His scaled face twisted in a cruel grin as he muttered, "I can smell them." The girl bit her lip to stop herself from crying out. She felt Daniel's hand brush her shoulder, a silent command to stay still. Then like lightning he moved. Daniel lunged from the shadows, striking fast. The knife pierced deep and the slaver collapsed with a gurgled cry. The others shouted, weapons raised, storming into the ruin. Chaos erupted. Torchlight flashed across the walls as the sound of metal clashed with bone. Daniel fought with sharp precision, his knife slashing, his fists striking, his boots driving enemies back. He was only one man, yet every move carried weight as though his will itself kept him alive. The girl watched, frozen. She wanted to hide, but something stronger rooted her in place. She saw the way he fought, not for glory, not for power, but with the fierce determination of a man who refused to surrender. A slaver broke past Daniel, spotting her in the corner. His grin widened as he raised his club. "Got her," he shouted. The girl's body locked. She could not run, could not scream. She only stared at the weapon about to crush her. But Daniel was faster. He tackled the slaver before the blow fell, his knife slicing across the alien's arm. The club dropped with a heavy thud, inches from her feet. Daniel forced the attacker down, his blade pressing hard until the threat was gone. The girl gasped, her chest burning. She had never seen anyone place themselves between her and danger like that, not once in her entire life. The last slaver, larger than the rest, roared and charged. Daniel met him head-on. They clashed, fists and blades, each strike echoing through the ruin. Dust rained from the ceiling as the wall shook with the force of their fight. The girl wanted to close her eyes, but she could not. Her gaze locked on Daniel's face, sweat, grit, but no fear. He fought as though every heartbeat mattered, as though losing was not an option. Finally, with a sharp twist, Daniel drove his knife deep into the slaver's side. The alien staggered, roared one last time, then collapsed in the sand. Silence fell. Only the sound of Daniel's breathing filled the ruin. The girl sat frozen, her body trembling. Her eyes darted to the slavers lying still, then to the human standing tall among them. He wiped the blade on his coat, then turned to her. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes searched her carefully. She shook her head, unable to find words. Her throat felt tight, her chest heavy with emotions she did not understand. Daniel knelt beside her, his tone firm. "Then listen to me. You are not worthless. Do you understand? People don't fight like this for things with no value." Tears blurred her vision. She opened her mouth, but only a whisper came. "Why me?" Daniel's gaze softened. "Because someone had to choose you. And I did." The girl pressed her hands to her face, shaking. She had been sold for liquor, mocked as trash, hunted like prey. Yet here, in the ruins of a forgotten station, one human had stood against death itself for her. Something inside her broke, and then rebuilt. Not all at once, but like the first stones of a new foundation. For the first time, she began to believe that maybe her life was not just something to be traded away. As the firelight returned and the night closed in, she looked at Daniel and whispered a promise she barely understood herself. "I will not leave you. And for the first time, her words carried weight, not fear. The ruins were quiet again, but the girl could not forget the sound of battle, the clash of weapons, the cries of the dying, the way Daniel had stood between her and death. Sleep did not come easy. When she closed her eyes, she saw the Slavers' Club falling toward her, and each time it was Daniel's hand that stopped it. At dawn, he was already moving. He packed the cart, his coat torn, his knuckles bruised, but his face calm as ever. The girl watched him, her heart caught between gratitude and fear. As they walked into the pale morning, the land stretched wider, emptier than before. The wind was sharp, carrying whispers of distant storms. She stayed close to Daniel now, not out of fear of him, but because she felt safer within his shadow. After hours of silence, she finally spoke. "Why do you keep going?" "You could leave me behind. It would be easier." Daniel did not look at her. His eyes scanned the horizon, always searching. "Because I made a choice," he said simply. "And I do not break my choices." His words sank deep, but the girl's doubts clung stubbornly. She had been abandoned before. Choices, promises, words, none had lasted. Could a human truly be different? By midday, they reached a narrow canyon, the rocks towering high, shadow swallowing the ground. The girl shivered. The place felt like a trap. Daniel slowed his steps, his hand resting near his knife. "Stay close," he murmured. They had not gone far when the sound of footsteps echoed above. Figures appeared on the cliffs, silhouettes against the sun. More slavers, this time armored, carrying rifles that gleamed with cruel light. The girl froze, terror choking her. "They found us again," she whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. He pulled her behind a boulder as shots rang out, shattering the rocks around them. Dust exploded into the air. Pinned down, Daniel scanned the canyon. Outnumbered, outgunned, no easy way out. His voice was calm but urgent. "Do you trust me?" The girl's breath shook. Trust. The word felt heavy, dangerous, but his eyes burned with the same fire she had seen before, the fire that refused to abandon her. "Yes," she whispered. Daniel's hand squeezed hers once, firm and steady. "Then run when I tell you. Don't look back." Before she could answer, he moved. Swift as the storm, he leapt from cover, knife flashing, using the canyon's shadows to his advantage. Gunfire echoed, sparks flying off stone. The girl crouched low, heart racing, watching as Daniel fought with reckless precision. But even he could not fight bullets forever. A shot grazed his arm, blood streaking his coat. He staggered, yet did not fall. With a roar, he pulled one slaver down from the cliff, their bodies crashing into the dust. The girl's instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, to vanish. But something stronger held her in place. She could not abandon him, not after everything. Instead, she searched the ground frantically. Her eyes caught the slaver's dropped weapon, an old metal rod. She grabbed it with trembling hands, her grip weak but desperate. Another slaver jumped down, aiming at Daniel. The girl's body moved before her mind. She swung the rod with all her strength, striking the alien's head. The sound rang out sharp, the slaver collapsing to the ground. Her breath came fast, her arm shaking. She had never fought before, never dared, yet she had done it. For him. Daniel glanced at her, blood on his face but pride in his eyes. "Good," he said simply before turning back to finish the fight. The battle raged until the canyon echoed only with silence once more. The slavers lay scattered, their weapons broken, their voices gone. Daniel limped to her side, his coat torn and blood-soaked. The girl dropped the rod, her chest heaving. Fear and shock mixed with something new, strength she had not known she carried. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "You fought," he said. "That means you are no longer worthless. Remember that." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not only from fear. They were from something brighter, fragile but real. For the first time, she began to believe his words. Maybe she was not trash. Maybe she could fight. Maybe she could matter. As the sun set beyond the canyon, the girl stood taller, her step steadier beside the human who had given her more than survival. He had given her a reason to keep walking. The canyon behind them was littered with the silence of battle, but the journey ahead was no less dangerous. Daniel's steps were slower now, his arm bleeding from the rifle wound. Still, he pushed forward, refusing to collapse. The girl stayed close, watching every movement. her heart pounding with fear not for herself, but for him. By evening, they reached the edge of a settlement hidden in the dunes. Smoke rose from crooked chimneys and voices echoed faintly, but the sight froze her blood. The same red tattoos marked the gates. This was a slaver stronghold. Daniel's jaw tightened. "We can't stay here," he muttered, but before they could retreat, a shout rang out. Guards spotted them, weapons raised. In moments, they were surrounded. The girl's breath caught in her throat. There was no fight left in Daniel. He was wounded, outnumbered. The slavers laughed as they circled, their leader stepping forward, his eyes cold. "So this is the human we've heard of," he sneered. "The one who wasted good liquor in a cart on trash?" His gaze turned to her, and here's the trash itself. "Worth less than the dirt beneath my boots." The words cut her, sharp as ever, but this time she did not shrink. She looked at Daniel, bleeding yet still standing tall. He had chosen her, fought for her, bled for her, and now she realized it was her turn. The leader raised his blade toward Daniel. "Leave the girl. You can go. Humans should know better than to bleed for nothing." Daniel's voice came steady even through pain. "She is not nothing." The slavers laughed, mocking him. But the girl's hands clenched. For the first time, she felt the truth of his words burning in her chest. She was not worthless. Not anymore. Before fear could stop her, she stepped in front of Daniel, her thin body a shield. Her voice shook, but it carried through the night. "You call me worthless," she said, her eyes locked on the leader. "But if I was worthless, you would not want me back. If I was nothing, you would not waste your time hunting me. I am more than what you sold me for. I am more because he showed me I am." The guards hesitated, their laughter fading. The leader's face twisted with rage. "You dare speak?" he snarled, raising his weapon. But in that heartbeat of distraction, Daniel moved. With the last of his strength, he pulled his knife and struck, the blade finding its mark. The leader roared and collapsed, his weapon clattering to the ground. The guards froze, shocked. The girl seized the moment. She grabbed the fallen blade, holding it with trembling hands but fierce eyes. "Go," she shouted, her voice ringing with a strength she had never known. "Leave us or join him." Something in her voice, raw and unbroken, made the guards hesitate. One by one they stepped back, fear overtaking their greed. In moments the path was clear. Daniel leaned against her, weak but alive. She supported him, her thin frame carrying more weight than she thought possible. Together they walked out of the stronghold, leaving behind the echo of chains and cruelty. Under the starlit sky, far from the laughter of slavers, they collapsed near a quiet dune. The night was cold, but their fire burned strong. Daniel looked at her, his voice faint but firm. "You stood. You fought. That means you are free, not because I chose it, but because you did." Tears ran down her face, but this time they were not from pain. They were from pride. She nodded, clutching his coat around her shoulders. For the first time, she did not feel like something traded for bottles and carts. For the first time, she felt like a life worth saving. And as the desert wind carried away the last echoes of the slavers' laughter, she whispered the words that had lived in her heart since the market, but only now carried truth. "I am not worthless." Daniel smiled faintly, closing his eyes to rest. The girl sat awake beside him, watching the stars above. Her hope no longer a fragile spark, but a fire strong enough to guide her through the darkness.